Coming up on Tech News Today, HBO teaming up with Apple, maybe also Sony, to unveil new PlayStation and also retire an old product. Path fined for violating the privacy of children. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, February 1st, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell last year's gadgets. Find out what your used iPad, MacBook, iPhone, Galaxy S, and other smartphones are worth at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
I'm Darren Kitchen.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting each time with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feeds. Sony posted a web page Thursday evening, causing an explosion of speculation. It promises to tell us about the future of PlayStation on February 20th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time in New York City. Wall Street Journal reports its sources say a new console will go on sale before the end of the year, running AMD processors and emphasizing social gaming.
Bloomberg's reporting that Apple is in negotiations to start carrying Time Warner's HBO Go, the app anyway, on the Apple TV by mid-2013. This comes from anonymous sources, of course. Cable and satellite subscribers who pay for HBO would be able to watch the entire HBO collection on Apple TV, but it's not an a la carte offering, at least not yet.
Clearwire issued a transaction update regarding a takeover bid from Sprint. Now, Clearwire accepted an offer by Sprint to buy the remainder of Clearwire's shares back in December, and the transaction update still recommends the takeover. However, Clearwire says it's still looking at Dish's offer to take over the company as well. Seems like Clearwire's playing the field.
Strategy Analytics reports Apple sold the most phones in the United States in the fourth quarter, passing Samsung and taking on the top spot for the first time. Apple sold 17.7 million phones, up 38% year over year. Samsung came in second with 16.8 million sales, and LG took third with 4.7 million. Numbers aren't my strong suit today.
Kim.com has gone to the other extreme now with his new mega file sharing service, removing legitimate files with fake DMCA takedown notices. The reason? It's an effort to combat search-mega.me, an unauthorized search engine of files available on Mega. The search engine did not have a takedown policy and was using the Mega logo without permission. .com did admit in an interview he probably should have contacted the search engine first.
The New York Times was breached by hackers for over 4 months, and now they're in good company, I guess. The Wall Street Journal says it, too, has been breached in repeated attacks that have lasted several years. The publication says attackers originated from China and were monitoring its coverage of China. The journalists claim that journal sources on occasion had become hard to reach after information identifying them was included in emails, which suggests that information might have been gained by the attackers and worked its way to Chinese authorities.
Reuters reports that Dell is close to going private as soon as this Monday. Dell would be sold to a consortium led by Michael Dell and Silver Lake Partners. Michael Dell would take over majority ownership, and Silver Lake and Microsoft would be minority investors.
Windows 8 continued to gain market share in January, raising from 1.72% in December to 2.2% in January, according to Net Applications. Now, this puts Windows 8 in fifth place, behind Mac OS 10.8, behind Windows 7. Windows 7 remained in first with 44.4% of the market, but Windows 8 is still moving slower than Windows 7 did By this point of time in the release. Windows 7 had gained 7.71% of the market. And if for some reason you're curious, yes, Windows 8 still has 39.51%. Windows Vista still has fallen to 5.24%. And all the others are 2.1, including Gen 2.
Windows XP.
XP, yeah, has 39.
Is that what I said? Thanks.
Note, don't give Darren the numbers stories. Federation of German Consumer Organization, or VZVB, as its German initials are called, has sued Valve because the Steam video game service does not allow users to sell used copies of games. Valve's policies prohibit selling or transferring accounts to another person. The VZVB lost a case against Valve in 2010 over the prohibition of transferring user accounts. But since that time, the Court of Justice of the European Union has ruled that trading of used software licenses is legal. So I thought they'd give it another go.
Down with GIFs. You are so over. Well, you're on the decline anyway. PNG is now the most popular lossless image compression format on the web. Congrats! Only the lossy JPEG, which is the most appropriate format for photographs, is used on more sites. PNG is now used on 62.4% of all websites, just ahead of GIF with 62.3%. GIF was leading by more than 15% a year ago. And yes, that's how you say it. GIF.
Thank you for that story about the GIF. This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Gazelle. I was getting ready for my taxes last night, and one of the things you have to declare is all the income you get from selling stuff. I sold over $1,000 worth of gadgets to Gazelle last year. That's a nice pile of money and stuff that otherwise might have gone in the recycle bin. If you got some new gadgets for the holidays and you're still like, oh, it's the end of January, I've got this old stuff that I'm not using anymore, what do I do with it? Check out Gazelle.com. You got an old Android phone, you got an iPhone, you got a tablet. Go check it out, GAZELLE.com. Tell Gazelle the condition. They'll even buy broken iPhones and iPads. Get a risk-free offer for your gadgets, and then lock in the code for 30 days if you need even more time. They give you 30 days to get the device to them. Once they get it, they'll check it out and get you paid fast by check or PayPal. Go to Gazelle.com now. Get an offer for your iPhone, your Android, your BlackBerry phone, your iPad, or your other Apple products. It's easy, free shipping on most of the items. They'll even send you a box in some cases. Fast processing, no listing hassles. Sell last year's gadgets today at Gazelle.com, and we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Of course, always good to have Darren Kitchen with us on Fridays from Hack 5. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We also have an extra guest today. Very pleased and happy to have Stephen Johnson, host of New Brew Thursday at newbrewthursday.com with us. How's it going, Stephen?
Good. How you guys doing? It's been a while.
I'm sorry I'm missing you this year on your annual Pliny trip.
I know, but you're closer to me now, so we need to spend some time together in LA. So.
We can have our own beer trip.
I can come to the secret studio there and
to the lair. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start off talking about Apple TV and HBO teaming up. What's this about, IS?
Sure. Bloomberg says that Apple TV will get HBO Go by mid-2013, like Sarah said in Newsviews. Bloomberg citing two people familiar with the plans, so it's a different variation on familiar with the matter. It would work the same as HBO Go does everywhere. So you'd have to be a cable or satellite subscriber. You have to pay, and then you could get HBO Go on your Apple TV. Apple TV already has Netflix and Hulu Plus, and HBO Go is already on Xbox and Roku. Sarah, I know you love your Apple TV.
Love it.
Apart from the occasional app that shows up on the Apple television, do you expect Apple to ever open up the Apple TV to developers, or is it just like these hand-picked ones like HBO Go and Netflix?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Hulu Plus coming to Apple TV was something that was welcome to me, even though I could already get it on my Roku. I prefer the Apple TV interface. So this just seems like yet another one of these partnerships that makes the Apple TV a little bit more attractive, but it still kind of puts Apple in that it's a hobby category. To actually open it up to apps that many of us would be able to pick and choose from, much like the iOS world would be the next generation of Apple TV. And yeah, I think that's coming sooner than later.
Tom, what do you think about this? Because the thing is, it seems like Apple's being really, really tightly controlling over what applications show up on Apple TV. I mean, all the interfaces are very consistent. If you opened up developers, you might start having different interfaces for different applications.
I think that's what Apple might plan to do eventually with their full-blown non-hobby version of Apple TV, is to have an app store. They're very experienced at that. They know how to do that. But right now, I think they're testing things. And possibly one of the things they're doing with HBO Go is we know they're still looking for someone to partner up with them on the new platform of television, whatever it is. We also have heard lots of rumors that Time Warner was in close conversations to be that partner. Now, that's Time Warner Cable. This is Time Warner Television. Those are two different companies, but maybe some contacts were made there. I don't know. The idea of them bringing HBO Go, though, is the first time we'd have authentication. Sure, you have to sign into Netflix, sign into Hulu, and subscribe to them. But this is the first time you have to authenticate with a third-party subscriber. And that's why I'm less excited about this is I want to know what services are going to use it, right? You can get HBO Go on the Roku, but it doesn't work with every cable service out there.
It doesn't work
Even
with
if that cable,
Comcast.
it doesn't work with DirecTV either.
Yeah.
So I have to go to the Google TV to use HBO Go, which is it's just silly. If HBO Go should just, if they have a partnership, it should work with all of them, but it's confusing. So I don't know which partners are going to be on board with an Apple TV HBO Go, but I love the Apple TV. So I'd be happy to see another option on there for sure.
Steven, you think this is a sign at all that HBO is ready to put their apps on more things, or are they just going to do this very slow rollout?
Well, I love my Apple TV too, and I think that I have HBO via Verizon, and so I imagine it would work under those guidelines. But like Tom said, it's very confusing as to where the few times that I've tried to use HBO Go, it's like I don't know what my Verizon sign is off the top of my head, so it's not something I use on a regular basis. So it's not something that I've really seen a lot of usefulness for. If it were on my Apple TV, maybe, but my Apple TV is connected to the same box as my HBO. So I mean, it's kind of hard to really see the application there for me.
But that's the best part of this, right? Is like HBO Go is only available to people who have HBO,
Right.
so those people need it less.
Right. I mean, it would make more sense if, as an Apple TV owner, I could subscribe to HBO Go service without having to have it on my cable service. That would make more sense to me. But I'm afraid of seeing the Apple TV get inundated with a bunch of developers creating new applications for it because, like you said, I like the interface a lot, but what's going to happen when you start getting 15 more boxes on there and you're scrolling all the time trying to find the application you want to use because of the App Store and whatever else?
Well, one would hope you'd be able to pick and choose what would show up on that front page.
Yeah, but that's because I'd love to remove some of the boxes that are on there now.
Yeah.
You can't. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Darren, do you think there's a set-top box that's going to be able to do everything other than a computer at this point? Because, I mean, Apple TV, kind of limited. Roku can do a whole lot of things. But then again, you have all these hoops you got to jump through. Sometimes I just like using my computer to make everything work.
You know, I hate to say this, but a Windows machine is still the best kind of TV box experience just because everybody develops for whatever has the most market share first and then starts porting their applications to the, the Rokus and the Apple TVs of the world. Now, that said, I feel like Apple really had a chance to make a huge impact in this market with the Apple TV when it first launched. And it has since missed the boat, and every other opportunity, especially with the latest generation one, being able to like port iOS apps and things of that nature, it makes me wonder, is it just negligence? Is it just, oh, this is our hobby thing? Or is this a way of like protecting iTunes? Or do they see it as, as this might be indicative of a potential, moneymaker with premium partnerships?
That's going to be a rumored partnership. It's those people familiar with the plans in this case. One thing we do know, though, two of them, right? Sony is saying we're going to show you the future of PlayStation on February 20th. That seems pretty cut and dried when you first hear it. Wall Street Journal has more people familiar with things saying that the console would go on sale later this year. That would seem likely if they make an announcement. It would go on sale by the end of this year. It's so early in the year. But people are speculating, okay, is this going to be the PlayStation Orbis that has been rumored? The Orbis has been reported to have 4K resolution capability. It would lock games to user accounts, whether you buy them on disc or download them. It would have AMD processors, which would mean possibly no backwards compatibility with the Cell processor in the PS3. Sony Electronics Vice President of Home Entertainment Hiroshi Sakamoto told Emil on January 16th, quote, "We hope to deliver big news, but we must wait until May at least." E3 is coming in June. So that would seem to indicate that there's other big news coming down the road, possibly. Darren, what are we going to see on February 20th?
I have no idea what we're going to see. I mean, from the rumors, we're going to see something with an optical drive. We're going to see something that's incremental. I'm with social. I'm not that excited about social. I am excited about, continued competition in the console market. What I find is interesting, though, is the quotes that we're going to see some really exciting stuff in May. So why are we seeing anything at all February 20th if there's more good stuff coming in May? Which makes me wonder, does Sony know that between February 20th and May, there's going to be another announcement that they kind of want to trump? So I don't know. That's just where I start thinking.
Obviously, we'll find out 6 p.m. Eastern time in New York on February 20th. But if you had to guess, Steven, I mean, I think it's going to be a console, right?
Yeah, they put out their small handheld one recently. It's got to be a console, and I think the problem with these console releases, like the Wii U, is not getting a lot of attention. It's not getting. I mean, Tom finally plugged his in, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean.
To me, they keep releasing these consoles and they're getting better and better, and there's definitely a console market for it. But they're losing a lot of their players to the iPhone and the iPad and the handheld devices and whatnot. And so I think they'd be better off focusing a little bit more attention on getting some of these some of their money and ad revenue into the hands of the apps or the devices people are already using.
It is interesting to see Sony putting out a press conference on their own outside of a conference. You know, we've been seeing that trend for years now. But usually game consoles, you're like, they're going to do it at E3. Well, it looks like they're doing something ahead of that. Any other guesses, Sarah or Ayaz?
I vote console. I mean, I don't have a whole lot more insight than what is already rumored. But when you say big news and you're talking about a company like Sony, I just don't really see it being anything else.
Well, it seems like, I mean, from the reports, they were talking about the user experience changing. I could expect, I'm going to guess something very different. In February, maybe we'll see a new UI. Instead of that crossbar they've had for the longest time, we might see it on the PlayStation 3 rolling out now. So when they have that new console in June, they'll go, oh, you know this experience, you already had it for a couple of months.
All right, let's move on to Path getting in trouble with the FTC. What did they do to the children, Sarah?
Well, they let them on their network. Path has reached a settlement with the Federal Trade Commission on alleged violations of the Children's Online Privacy Protections Act. Now, Path, because of this, is going to have to pay $800,000 and has removed about 3,000 accounts from the network. They must also establish a comprehensive privacy program and to obtain independent privacy assessments every other year for the next 20 years. You might be going, whoa, what do they do? What do they do to the kids? It's not, I don't know. It's not as crazy as it sounds. Basically what happened is that underage Path users, so these are users under 13, were discovered during FTC investigations into a separate privacy issue. You might remember this was Path that uploaded iPhone address books to Path servers and didn't actually explicitly get permission from users. People got really upset about their privacy being breached. That's since Path has since changed their terms of service. Dave Morin wrote in a blog post that what had ended up happening is, he said, back in the day when Path was a younger company, he said, we asked users their birthdays during the process of creating an account. Easy enough. However, there was a period of time when our system was not automatically rejecting people who said that they were under 13. Before the FTC even got a hold of us, we discovered this problem, we fixed it in the sign-up process qualification, and then we suspended any underage accounts that had been somehow let through the cracks. So he said, we did all of this before the FTC made us do this, but this is actually just a settlement that they had to come to. He also says the typical Path user is about 25 years old. The company has about 6 million registered users. So you go, okay, well, all right. So this is something that Path obviously had to, they decided they couldn't fight it. They settled $800,000. I know Path has raised quite a bit of money. Maybe this is just a small dent in their money pool. But I think it's also very interesting. Just last month, Morin was at the DLD conference over in Germany and was making a big deal about how China was one of their really big markets, and he thought that a lot of that had to do with the tight-knit family structure there, and that something like Path might be really good in a family type of an atmosphere. They've also introduced their search functionality where you can sort of search back in time, and the family aspect of Path, I think, is very valuable. However, it's also not really for all families if kids can't be participatory. And, Path is a closed network. So you figure, well, if you're sharing stuff on Path, it's more private than, say, an underaged kid who's sharing stuff on Facebook and maybe doesn't understand the privacy settings well enough. Steven, I'll start with you. Do you? I know you use Path. Is this something that you think is going to be a hindrance if they want to grow their user base?
I think my first thought was when I was reading this was, why is it Path's fault that there are kids signing up on it? It's a service. It's to me, it's like if kids who are under 13 are signing up for these type of services, that's on their parents to deal with. That's not on Path to deal with. I don't see why they should have gotten fined for that. And I know Facebook has a bajillion under 13-year-olds on there.
Sure.
And I get friend requests from some of them, and I'm like, no.
Well, but that's usually kids that are just lying about their age, right?
Right.
Not telling the truth, and
Yeah,
then Path
so
not
but I
bumping them
totally
off.
agree. Like for me, my usage of Path is very limited to. It's like it's one of those things where I see these are people that I'm very interested in seeing. I want because I think I have 800 people that I'm friends with on Facebook. So obviously that's a stream of consciousness that I'm not going to see a lot of. But Path, I think I have like 75, 80 people that I monitor on there. And to me, yeah, I see a much better usage of that as far as like families and being able to kind of keep track of where your kids are, what they're listening to, what they're doing, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I do think that's a hindrance, and I don't think that they should have to worry about that. And it should be up to the end user to monitor their own usage of it.
Ayaz, do you think that just the mere fact that Path is a closed network where you have a maximum amount of friends, 150, and you can't see someone's profile, should put them in a different category under these FTC rules?
No, I mean, it applies to the online collection. So once you are online in any form, it seems like you have to worry about this. And the other thing is, I mean, Path could try to put in some features where they can get parental permission, because that's a way to do. You can collect data of children under 13 if you have permission, but there's a lot of paperwork involved with that. So that might be an issue for Path if they want to actually be dealing with that authentication of like, okay, let's check a credit card number. Kids, ask your parents' permission. So I don't know if they want to bother with that, because I don't know how much money they're going to make off of those kids anyway. If that's really why you collect the data, that's why you're bothering to have this user base, so you can make money eventually. So I don't know if it's going to hurt their network, but I don't know how they're going to get around it, and if they want to.
All right, let's talk about Kim.com. Yesterday we mentioned the search mega.me, and now it's at odds. You would have thought that Kim.com would have loved this. What's going on, Sarah?
So yesterday, we mentioned search.mega, search-mega.me. It's the worst, but that's what it's called. That was indexing files from Mega. That's not the only search engine that indexes files of this kind. But over the last few days, Mega users with legal files, who had uploaded legal files, were starting to see that sometimes they were unavailable in their accounts for alleged copyright violations. And a lot of these people are saying, well, what? No, this is totally legitimate. Except that in all of the cases, this happened after these users had published links to the files elsewhere on the internet. So, bit of a red flag there. Today, Kim.com has admitted, yes, Mega itself is actually behind this. We issued a bunch of basically fake DMCA notices to shut down search-mega.me because that site specifically does not have a takedown policy, which obviously is going to upset copyright holders, and also that the site used Mega's logo as well as a similar design to the point that .com says people might be confused. They might think that we're more closely associated than we actually are. .com told Torrent Freak that Mega was concerned about all of the press attention that Search Mega had received and articles focusing on copyrighted files, and obviously .com and Mega are treading on extremely thin ice in general, just because they're, we have authorities that are just waiting to take them down for any wrongdoing. He also says, in addition, Mega was receiving complaints from rights holders about the search index. So this is Mega's kind of saying, we gotta bow to these people because they actually have a point. And as Tom, you mentioned earlier in the show, he says, I probably should have just gone to the site, and perhaps I was a little bit rash with all these fake DMCA notices that are only going to upset the people using my service anyway, because it didn't make any sense. But that's what happened. He says, we're not going to be policing the internet. This is just one of these things. Searchmega.me was not playing by the rules, I think was the way that he worded it, and said, we will respond to rogue sites, which we feel that Searchmega was operating under if we need to. So, I mean, Kim.com is just a fascinating figure to me. I keep wanting this all to go away, but it's just, it's great gossip. It is.
Let's give him a break, Sarah. He's not good at following the DMCA. This is all new to him, right? So
I suppose.
it's going to take it's a little bit of a learning curve.
And also, so is using the DMCA as a weapon. I mean, he's used to being the victim of that kind of stuff, and so maybe he's just getting used to how to do those fake DMCA notices.
I think my favorite part of this whole story is that this all happened while he was asleep.
Yeah, he actually said that.
Yeah.
He said, I decided to do all of this while I was asleep.
Right. It's like,
So I think that's his way of saying, I didn't really think this through.
Right.
This was my solution. Probably could have done something a little bit more.
Does that mean he was
normal?
napping? I get the picture of him like sort of lounging on a couch napping, and people are like, "Hey, this search.mega is like, just block him. I'm taking a nap."
I don't have time for this. I'm sleeping. Go
He
away.
wakes up. Wait, what did we do? Oh, shouldn't have done that.
Of all those silly, tech reality shows, somebody should just put a camera on this guy. He's just a bizarre human being. I mean, with the story of inflatable tanks a long time ago. Now he's just issuing fake DMCA notices, and I mean, he's fun to read about, but I just don't know, how is he running a company?
Good question.
Like,
Didn't he actually pitch a reality show or talk about it? That sounds familiar, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
I don't know.
Huh.
It totally sounds within reason for .com.
Yeah, it does.
All right, let's talk about something real. Project Glass. Everywhere you see Sergey Brin, you'll see Project Glass on his face, and they've filed something with the FCC. What is it?
Yeah, the FCC document that was just published. It's from Google and talks about details about Project Glass. And one of the weirder things about it is Project Glass would send audio to the wearer using an integral vibrating element that provides audio to the user via contact with the user's head. That's pretty much bone conduction. It means you wouldn't have to wear headphones to hear audio if you're wearing the glasses. Also, some other information about Project Glass. Data is sent to the screen via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and Project Glass would have internal storage to store video. Sarah, bone conduction is new, but is this going to make it easier for people to get into Google Glasses because they don't have to jam earbuds into their ears because they're going to get vibrations through their skull?
That doesn't sound good to me either. That sounds like a headache.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm the naysayer of the group when it comes to.
No.
Come on, I'm just saying. Maybe I'm just super jealous that I haven't put them on yet or something, and so I just want to believe that it's going to be uncomfortable. I don't really like the idea of vibrating my skull.
But have
general.
you used bone conducting headsets before or earpieces? They don't
No.
vibrate your skull.
All right.
So I think, you could go just try one out at the store or something. They work really well.
It's not like a cell phone that attached to your head and it's like moving that way. I think it's a little bit more subtle than that. But Darren, what do you think? I mean, it seems like a pretty geeky concept, but the fact that you don't have to put things in your ears, I think that actually gives it a slight advantage.
Yes, that's exactly was my point. Is it's all about limiting that dorkiness factor, because that's going to be a huge barrier to entry when this comes to market. As somebody who's used both bone conducting headsets as well as Project Glass, I'll say that the idea is that it augments your reality. It's not supposed to take away from what's in front of you. And I think that this is just one more technology that it can integrate so that it doesn't take away from your hearing. It doesn't take away from your line of sight. So you're having a conversation and it seems normal. I think this is great.
Stephen, does the idea of vibrating your skull irk you at all?
I'm going to let other people be the guinea pigs on that one. But once I find out that skulls are not shattering while they listen to music too loudly, then I'll be okay with it. I just think that this is good. We're going to see a lot of people bumping into telephone poles as they walk down the street with this thing on. And
No, we've been doing that for years.
it's just going to make it worse. But
I asked this what do you think? Vibrating skull? I'm like, that sounds terrible. And Tom's like, doesn't vibrate your skull. Haven't you ever tried this before? Bone conduction.
We've had bone conduction for years.
Well, I really think that it sounds way stranger than it's going to feel. I mean,
Sure.
if you're going to hear audio and you don't have to wear earbuds, I think that's actually a really big deal because you're not disconnecting from the world. The idea that somebody's always looking down at text messaging while they're plugged up their ears, that I always thought was a real problem. Because I know when I was walking my dogs or something, I always had to make sure that I had the volume really low so I could see what's going on or hear what's going on. This thing makes it a lot easier. It's that barrier. Like Darren is saying, this is so geeky. How can you make it slightly less geeky? And I think this might be a way to do it.
Because wearable technology, just at its core, isn't something that every person is going to accept immediately. So removing those barriers and saying, look, this is one less thing that you have to do. You don't have to put that thing in your ear. You just put the glasses on. And
I think what this has shown too, though, is that they need to not call it bone conducting technology. Jawbone's has made these sorts of things for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if a few people in the audience have used them without even knowing it. Because they work really well. They don't vibrate your skull, and they provide really good audio. So I think this is really smart on Google's part. Is you're not going to have some clunky thing that you got to put in your ears. You just put on the glasses and you magically can hear. That's kind of amazing for people when they try it on. Let's finish up with Cisco's 2013 annual security report. Wait, no, don't turn off. There's something pretty interesting in here. They do this every year. That's why it's called the annual security report. And what they found this year is that users clicking on online advertisements, just at regular sites, were 182 times more likely to get malware than people surfing to an adult content site, like a porn site or a wares site. In fact, you were 21 times more likely to get malware while online shopping at normal popular shopping sites, 27 times more to get malware at a search engine than if you were at a wares site, a counterfeit software site. Now, we're not saying you should go to those places, but the perception is, oh, you got a malware. It's probably because you were surfing those shady porn wares sites. Mary Landisman, senior security researcher at Cisco, told Security Week users aren't stupid. They're careful out there. It's just the pervasiveness of this sort of malware in normal advertisements. And in fact, it's on your desktop. Mobile malware accounted for barely 0.5% of malware in 2012. That's not the problem yet. So what do we do, Darren? If the ads we see at the regular sites that we consider safe are infecting us, how do you protect yourself?
Well, I mean, the smartest way to browse is to actually use a live distribution so that it's read only and so that it doesn't actually touch your hard drive. Of course, nobody's going to go through that because it's super inconvenient. But there are things that you can do to help mitigate the kinds of risks. Things like not script on Chrome or no script on Firefox, blocking JavaScripts by default, and blocking those plugins. It's really the cross-platform stuff like Flash, Adobe PDF, and Java that are like huge targets because you can, get people on multiple platforms with those. So you want to make sure that you use a browser extension or plugin that will allow you to turn those off by default. You're also just inherently by doing this going to see less intrusive and really annoying ads, which is kind of a great thing. And then as long as you're doing that, go ahead and get yourself HTTPS everywhere and a cookie manager as well. But yeah, that's my best advice. But also keep in mind that, of course, it's in Cisco's best interest to say this. And it also makes sense, though, that malware would move more towards advertising on larger sites just to hit a swath of a larger target.
Yeah, part of that is the perception that the other sites are dangerous makes people more careful around those sites. So they want to go to the places that are perceived to be safe because that's easier. Anybody else surprised by this? Steven?
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised by this because I think that we have, over the last several years on the internet, learned to trust some of the, like Amazon.com and these online shopping sites and whatnot. We've got that, like, they've earned that trust, and now it's coming back to say, well, not really, just kidding. You're actually going to get malware now from this. And so, yeah, this does surprise me quite a bit. And I think that there's got to be some culpability with the online shopping stores that are serving up these ads and the companies that are serving these ads up to make sure this isn't happening.
But ultimately, it's your responsibility to secure yourself. While I believe that would be good, you should always take best security practices.
Absolutely,
regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, a lot of what you're saying is great security, but it also makes it dang near impossible to enjoy your online experience. I mean, if you turn off JavaScript, you're going to lose half the internet. And
yeah, convenience and security aren't best friends.
No, they're not. Absolutely. I know that for a fact. But it's sad that it has to happen that way. So.
I think you're both right. I mean, Darren's right that you should take responsibility for securing your system, but also I think ad servers, I think Steven's got a point. Ad servers need to start working on how to prevent malware from getting through their systems. It's not easy, but it's much more possible than it should be. Let's finish up with the randomizer, shall we? IAS moon bases could be 3D printed from lunar soil.
Yeah, so that's the story on The Verge. The idea is that so you don't have to ship out all of these materials on the moon to make a base. Why not print them? And you could print a building in a week. Is that right?
That's what they're saying. They can print a building in a week, at least on Earth. So presumably they could try to get within that range on the moon. The current blueprint from Foster and Partners would be a dome-shaped building with a wall designed to protect space radiation and tiny meteoroids. It's a hard thing to test. We have just a handful of moon rocks down here, so not a lot of material. We'd have to actually go to the moon to try this out. But fascinating stuff, don't you think?
Well, I mean, I love the idea of trying to print a place on the moon. I mean, this is just, it seems...
Well, it's like you still have to bring the materials, right? You got to get all the stuff that the 3D printer's going to use.
Well, it's going to use...
No, they're going to use the
soil.
soil on the moon.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You're building like
So
huts.
you just bring the printer. Well, you bring
Well,
it. There's a magnesium
there's
oxide.
the
You gotta bring
binding
battery
salts
pack.
that solidify the material, so you might have to bring those unless you're mining
Right.
for those salts while you're there. I'm just thinking, why are we waiting to colonize the moon to get these awesome huts? I mean, I want one of these so it can just like feel like I'm on Tatooine.
Exactly.
You just want to make a hut anywhere you go.
Call up Foster and Partners. I'm sure they'd set you up. Like, oh yeah, we have the design. Go ahead, make your own biodome.
I think this is going to spark some like moon protection organizations as well. Like,
Yeah.
don't pollute our moon and don't use up our moon's natural resources, and so
Conserve the moon. Yeah,
Conserve
let's
the
not go
moon.
crazy.
Well,
Let's only-
there'd be a historical section of the moon that doesn't get changed. No buildings over 2 feet tall. And then the other ones would be little big craters. I mean, I don't know what kind of building codes are going to go on the moon.
the moon's
If
out of
there are
toner.
no trees on the moon, can there
Moon's out
not
of
be
toner.
tree-hugging hippies? How does that work?
They're-
I guess you'd be a rock-hugging hippie.
Crater hugging hippies, maybe. All right, let's see what things are coming sooner than living on the moon in the calendar.
So if you follow RIM as a publicly traded company, it's going to start trading as BlackBerry starting February 4th. That makes sense since its official name is going to be BlackBerry. The legal name change is going to come later this year, but it'll be BlackBerry on the market. Sony's Xperia Z pre-orders have begun on 3 and 02. Those are both in the UK. This is ahead of the February 28th full release. And Sony is saying goodbye to the mini disc. Yes.
Oh, goodbye,
Can you believe
mini
it?
disc.
Mini discs are still being sold, but the last players will be sold in March, and then that's it. So if you want legacy tech, now's the time. I think I still have a mini disc player somewhere in a box.
I do.
I feel like Sony's the last person to say goodbye to it.
Yeah. Sony has an issue with that sometimes. Letting
out the
go.
light.
They probably
in
were
the
just so
factory.
big they didn't even realize they were still making it. They're like, what? Why is that still going? Turn that off. Turn that off. Next week.
And that's
All
what's
right,
on the calendar.
Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
We've got a message from TJ. He says, hey, TNT crew. Yesterday, Tom raised the question of why there are no Barnes & Noble stores in airports. The reason is rent and profit margins. I used to work for one of the major players in airport retail. Retail space in airports is rented by a percentage of sales. The rent percentages are often so high that book sales are actually a loss to the store because their profit margin on books is less than the rental percent. Every newspaper and most magazines sold in airport shops are sold at a net loss to the shop for the same reason. Airport shops make their profit on gifts and such, and that's why everything is so expensive at airports.
So that made sense, and I emailed TJ back and asked him, if that's the case, why do I see these bookshops in airports that are all books? Are they just losing money? And he responded.
They wrote back saying, for our company, the book-only shops were operated, were basically not profitable or break even, and we were forced to have them in order to get the retail contract. They were subsidized by our other shops. We had multiple shops in the same airport with different brand identities to make it appear that the shops were not all run by the same company, but we ran 90% of the shops.
Airport travel is so crappy, and now I know this. They're just duping us.
Totally.
It almost makes
free
it not worth
market.
the pat down.
Almost. What depends
What
on
do you mean you're all the same company? Darn it. We got another email from Rich in lovely Cleveland who says, while I think BlackBerry did what they needed to do with the BB10 launch, it does seem like they could have been at the spot years ago if they had any kind of vision in leadership in the past. Not to beat a dead horse, but if RIM had purchased Palm, they could have had a modern, critically lauded operating system that functions very similarly to one that they've spent the last 3 years developing in QNX, which they bought 3 weeks before Palm sold to HP. Seems like BlackBerry is trying to play catch-up after sitting out for 3 years when they could have been in the running with a relatively competitive product the whole time. Not to say WebOS was perfect, but it was better than BlackBerry 7. And imagine a Pre with a bold keyboard. It almost makes me forget the Pixie. I really hope BlackBerry 10 does keep them afloat on a technical and a UI level. I find it refreshing. Let's hope the change from RIM to BlackBerry also leaves behind their frustrating mismanagement.
Well, Rich is just pining for the return of Palm, and I'll forgive him for that. But saying that BlackBerry needed vision, I think yes, absolutely. That's why if whether it was the vision of trying to buy Palm or something else, I'm not sure if they'd bought Palm back when HP did that they would have made any better use of it than HP did. I mean, HP wasn't able to make a go out of Palm yet, so I don't know. I like the world that he describes here, though. I wish it were real.
I think that Palm had its time, and it's done.
Yeah,
and you can't bring it back.
And BlackBerry OS 10 is good. Maybe too late. I understand what Rich is saying, but maybe not. I actually, on the local news here, they teased a story about BlackBerry's new phones, saying BlackBerry may have better phones than the iPhone.
Well, that'll get people to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, Tom, you're in LA now. They have weird news.
No. It's the same in San Francisco. It's the same in St. Louis. I mean, all these news stations do it. But I just thought it was funny that the BlackBerry announcement was good enough to be in the tease to get you to watch the news. Maybe it's that better than the iPhone thing. I don't know. Well, that is it for this episode of Tech News Today. Darren Kitchen, what's happening at Hack 5 this week?
Oh, we have an epic episode. You need to go and check it out. It's all about S-Shuttle or SSH-Shuttle. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, but it's ways to turn SSH into a VPN, kind of. Check it out.
Shuttle, right?
Shuttle.
It's lots of S's. And Steven Johnson, always good to have you, man.
Always good to be here.
Been too long. Tell us about New Brew Thursday and where you can find your stuff online.
We're a craft beer show. We drink beer and get crazy. And we are not really for kids. So don't watch it with your family.
You don't have that path problem.
Yeah, we don't want the path problem.
Not tempted.
But yeah, we're at newbrewthursday.com. We're on iTunes, Vimeo, Blip, YouTube, all the normal places.
You guys inspire me to drink better beer, I have to say.
I appreciate that, Tom. That makes me feel better.
Excellent. You can submit stories to Tech News Today. If you're like, hey, why didn't you cover X? Go tell us about it. technewstoday.reddit.com. That's where we take the temperature of some folks in the audience about what stuff they'd like us to cover. We look at that every day to figure out what we're going to cover on the show. technewstoday.reddit.com. Also, if you liked a particular moment at any point during the week, doesn't have to be today's show, remember twit.tv/bestof. You can submit your favorite moments from Tech News Today or any show on Twit, and that helps us at the end of the year to put together our Best Of show. If you go watch the Best Of show that Jason edited together from the holidays, a lot of people loved that, and one of the reasons it was so good was not just Jason's superior editing skills.
Although that helps.
It certainly doesn't hurt.
Okay.
But it was also the fact that he was helped out by people tracking all of these selections. So he had a lot of great material to work with. So go do that, twit.tv/bestof. You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. Email us, TNT@twit.tv, or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. We'll be back on Monday with an all-new episode. See you then.